Welcome to the Fantasy Football Playoffs, everyone. Today we're going to break down my top 5 flex waiver ads, wide receiver and running backs. We're going to go over quarterback and tight end pickups, and also we're going to go over and rehash kind of the mustache players that I talked about in last week's waiver video. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Number 5 waiver addition is Sincere McCormick, 16% rostered right now, 5.5 yards per carry for the Raiders, leading the backfield the last 2 weeks. 62.5% success rate on the ground as well. If I had to guess, I would imagine Alexander Mattison should be back this week and McCormick may be in a committee going forward. But if you're desperate at running back, McCormick may have earned a bigger role, being the only thing really in this Raiders backfield resembling a consistent run game this year. He had 59% of the snaps, 60% of the carries last week. Again, not sure if those percentages hold if Mattison returns. But we'll have to wait and see if Mattison is practicing this week, if Zamir White is practicing this week. If they're out again, I think Sincere McCormick could be a very good option. Number 4 waiver addition on the week is Isaiah Davis, 15% rostered on sleeper leagues right now. If Breece Hall misses yet again in week 15, which is a possibility, although they do sound optimistic he can come back, this is a startable flex option. We all thought, at least myself included, that Braylon Allen would be a workhorse if Breece Hall ever went down. Well, this backfield became a 50-50 split. You could see there 52% of the snaps, got a good percentage of the carries, good percentage of the routes, commanding targets, ended up scoring a touchdown in back-to-back weeks as well. So Isaiah Davis, an interesting option for those of you guys also desperate at running back. Pickup number 3, we have Tank Bigsby. Definitely a usable flex option this week versus the New York Jets. Not an overly intimidating defense by any means, especially against the run. 20 opportunities this week versus the Titans. Not sure you're going to get too many positive game scripts out of Tank Bigsby, imagining that Jacksonville's going to win a lot of games. Like, they're playing the Jets this week. Again, it's not an overly intimidating matchup, but Tank Bigsby is the good game script. The Jaguars are winning running backs. So if Tank Bigsby finds himself in positive game scripts going forward, he might end up having 15 to 20 touches yet again. And that is definitely valuable for those of you guys that are suffering running back injuries like Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. So Tank Bigsby, not a bad option if you guys need running backs. He also kind of accomplishes another purpose, which is stashing players for the fantasy playoffs, because he does have a handcuff appeal as well. If anything happens to ETN, he's probably a workhorse running back. Number 2, waiver addition on the week. And again, these go in ascending order. So whoever I have ranked first is the guy that I would pick up and fill up my waiver slate as a result. Number 2 guy that I have here is Patrick Taylor, running back of the San Francisco 49ers. For those of you guys who have no idea who this is, 8% rostered. He is expected, or at least currently as we stand right now, expected to be the starting running back for the San Francisco 49ers on Thursday Night Football against the Rams. If Isaac Guerendo misses week 15, then Taylor is probably going to work into the full workload. Updates from an injury perspective from some of the fantasy docs I've seen have said that maybe Guerendo will be good to go, but it is possible that he misses the game given that it is a short week. He's coming off of 4 days rest and he could have some swelling. So I would say, if I had to guess, Isaac Guerendo maybe misses a game because he's going to have extra rest going forward, and Patrick Taylor may be a good spot start for those of you guys that are desperate, who lost Breece Hall, who lost Kenneth Walker, who are losing players to injuries. We'll see what happens with Bucky Irving's injury and so on and so forth. So keep that in mind. Patrick Taylor, a half-decent spot start. Jalen McMillan is my number 1 waiver ad at the wide receiver and running back position of the week. He finally had a good game. 2 straight games running 80+% of the routes. Led the team with 7 targets and a 27% target share in week number 14. 59 yards, scored 2 touchdowns against the Raiders. They do have the Chargers this week. The Buccaneers probably not going to be as prolific on offense as they were last week. A tougher opponent, but it is a must-win game yet again if they want to hang on to the NFC South lead. Dallas and Carolina in week 16 and 17. So even if you guys are out there on a bye or something and you kind of want to just see it one more time with Jalen McMillan before you put him into your lineup, you could see what he does against the Chargers this week and then maybe decide to use him in week 16 or 17 if you don't have to worry about starting any players on your bye week in week 15. So definitely go ahead and pick out those guys. If you have some extra spots and you're looking for some honorable mentions, check your waiver wire to see if Cedric Tillman was dropped because he has missed the last 2 games with a concussion. I still think, given the way that Jameis is throwing the ball, up-tempo, pass-heavy offense, he is definitely a viable option, and he should be back this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Jaleel McLaughlin, before the bye, actually led the team in carries, so he's a widely available spot start running back as well. If you're looking for quarterbacks or tight ends to start, week 15 plays who are sub 30% rostered at quarterback, Drake May versus the Cardinals, Aaron Rodgers versus the Jaguars, and Bryce Young versus the Cowboys. If you were screwed at quarterback for whatever reason, you could go and pick out some of those guys. I think Drake May, the most appealing of that group because he can run the ball as well. But Bryce Young and Aaron Rodgers playing a little bit better as of late. And if you're looking for a guy a little bit more heavily rostered but might be available in your league, Matthew Stafford versus the San Francisco 49ers, not a half bad option as well. And then at the tight end position, we have Pat Freiermuth against the Philadelphia Eagles. He has had 45-plus yards in 3 straight games. We don't know if George Pickens is going to come back for this game as well, so Freiermuth, a decent spot start there. Noah Gray against the Cleveland Browns. He has 4-plus receptions in 4 straight games, so keep that in mind. Noah Gray, a half-decent streamer as well. And then Juwan Johnson versus the Washington Commanders. 18+% target share in back-to-back weeks, 75% plus of the routes the last 2 games as well. And keep in mind, Taysom Hill now out for the season dealing with that knee injury. So Juwan Johnson appears that he has taken the full, number 1 tight end role on this team. We will be without Derek Carr for the Saints, so we don't know how good this offense is going to be, but Juwan Johnson, a half-decent option for those of you guys needing a spot start. So I am going to revisit the conversation I had last week when I talked about all the mustache handcuffs, because it is worth reiterating, especially for those of you guys who don't need any help. If you have a team where, you got 4 or 5 really, really good bench options and your starting lineup is loaded and maybe you only have 1, maybe 2 bench spots open, I want to reiterate that handcuffs and stashing handcuffs has a 2-pronged effect on how you can win your fantasy championship. Number 1, you take away a league winner from your league mates because he could be on your bench. And number 2, you could actually use that league winner yourself. So however many bench spots you can afford to have and burn on handcuffs, you should be doing that this time of year, especially if you have a week 15 bye, because the only types of players you're going to get into your lineup, realistically, because your team is so good, are players who work into full workloads all of a sudden. And last week, if you'd followed this advice, a lot of you guys probably picked up Zach Charbonnet or Braylon Allen, and let me know in the comments down below if you did, because all of a sudden, those guys became very valuable, specifically Charbonnet, given the week that he had. So hopefully, last week, if you watched this video, I helped you guys pick out Zach Charbonnet as one of the best handcuffs in fantasy. And again, remember that this time of the year, you don't need to hold that bum 7th receiver on your roster. You don't need to hold that random running back 6 on your roster. You don't need to hold a second quarterback or a second tight end if you already have Lamar Jackson and Brock Bowers. There's no reason to hold, Geno Smith on your bench or something like that. You can always pick up guys like that on the waiver wire. Take that Geno Smith, drop him for a handcuff running back that could eventually help your team. And again, I have revised handcuff rankings for those of you guys that are curious. Okay, handcuffs are great. Who do I pick up? RB1 upside handcuffs, I've revised the tiers a little bit. Zach Charbonnet, of course, heavily rostered now that Kenneth Walker is out, but he is the best handcuff in fantasy, evidenced by what he did in week 14. Tyler Algier, again, he hasn't been useful yet, but if Bijan were to go down, he would be very useful. Same goes for Trey Benson, Ray Davis of the Buffalo Bills, and Jalen Warren. Again, some of these guys, we have good samples of them being elite handcuffs and having great performances when the starter was out. Charbonnet, Algier, and Ray Davis being good examples of that. Some guys, the starter hasn't really been out yet in the time that they've been in the backfield together, Jalen Warren and Trey Benson, but we know that they would be very good options should James Conner or Najee Harris go out with injuries. So make sure all these guys are rostered. And again, if they all are rostered in your league, then we go down to the tier 2 handcuffs. And if some of these guys are available, then you pick up them and you stash them. Isaac Guerrero, of course, was the biggest waiver addition last week. He now enters this tier 2 high-end RB2 upside handcuff territory. Blake Corum, again, we have seen Kyron Williams be healthy, but if anything were to happen to him, Blake Corum would be a huge beneficiary of it. Braylon Allen, again, Isaiah Davis was more involved than we thought, which is why he drops down a tier. I actually had him in the RB1 upside tier before. Kareem Hunt, Tajay Spears, Roshan Johnson, Cam Akers, and Damian Pierce. Specifically, Spears, Roshan, Akers, and Pierce. Nobody's thinking of these guys right now. But if Swift went down, if Aaron Jones went down, if Joe Mixon went down, these guys would suddenly become very valuable, which is why you want to stash them before that happens, because you block your league mates from getting a league winner, and you also potentially stash up that production for yourself. And again, if all of those guys are available or you still have bench spots left, the RB2 volume placed here, you can also fill out your bench with some of these guys. Again, they'd be less high upside options because of the offenses that they play in or the workloads or the talent perspective of the player that we're talking about. But if Tank Bigsby, Khalil Herbert, Raheem Mostert, Jerome Ford, Kenneth Gainwell, Jeremy McNichols, Devin Singletary, Antonio Gibson, Keaton Mitchell, and Emmanuel Wilson are available, and you have some extra bench spots and all the other guys I talked about aren't available, you could always stash and pick up those players as well. So little revisit of the mustache video from last week. Definitely go check that out. I went a little bit more in depth on that, but I did revise the handcuff rankings, just be warned. And then also too, the top 5 waiver ads, wide receiver and running backs this week, quarterbacks and tight ends as well. If you guys are looking for defensive streamers, I will cover that on Thursday's video. But if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. Follow us over on TikTok. Check out the site, flockfantasy.com, for all of our bonus content, rest of season rankings, dynasty content. Our dynasty draft guide is going to be coming very, very soon in the new year as well. So make sure you guys are plugged into everything that we're doing over there. Flockfantasy.com, promo code FSE. Sign up for a 7-day free trial. Get 30% off any of the packages with our promo code. And when you sign up annually, you save 6 months and you get a free team review so we can break down your fantasy team, your dynasty team, and tell you exactly what we would do in your situation. So if that interests you, check it out down below in the link in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.